Hello. Hello, dear audience. Hello, community. Good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world right now. And welcome to our AMA live stream. My name is Alfred. I am the staff in the marketing department of Matrix AI Network. Mostly I'm responsible for localization work, as most of the technical content, the manuals that you see, as well as the Medium official account are my work. And today we have Owen and Steve and Mr. Liu here as our guests, and we are looking to have a very fun and informative session here together. As you know, Matrix AI Network is a product. We have a vision. We have a very good product. We have a very good vision, and we are constantly working to bring this vision to the world. Our product is improving, although it's not perfect. It is constantly on the rise. And just a few days ago, we have brought our new update to the Matrix mainnet. I suppose a lot of you have questions and concerns that you want to share with us. So today, this AMA live stream, we have three parts. In the first part, we'll have Owen brief us on some of the changes, new features coming to the mainnet after this update. And in the second part, we have actually selected 10 most asked questions by the community. And we'll have Owen and Steve answer them one by one. Then in the third part, we'll have 5 questions selected from the community. So this is your chance to chat. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment below. And if you leave a question, then you have a chance of winning a reward for asking the question, 100 man tokens. So be sure to stay tuned till the end, or else you might miss the reward, even though your question is picked by us. So without further ado, I think let us go into the AMA live stream. So let us welcome Owen.
Hi everyone, it's Owen here. As we know, we just have updated a new patch of Matrix AI Network this week. In this patch, we have some new features. And at first, I'm very proud to announce that Matrix is the first one public blockchain who has successfully introduced the AI algorithm into the mining algorithm in our mining system. So from here, the mining of blockchains will no longer just waste the computing power and the resources. We can use the electricity resources and the computing power to produce the real value to the public and the social. After me, maybe Dr. Liu will give you more details about our AI mining. And the second part is we have optimized our storage system. So in the future, the old miners only will spend less storage to keep the block data. And also we have changed our algorithm of our master node selection. So in the future, each miner node will at least be selected once in 3 days. That will make the miners' revenue be smoother. So let me give the time to Dr. Liu to introduce our new AI mining system.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Liu Shengfeng, and I am the AI mining architecture of Matrix. So let me give you a brief introduction on AI mining. As we all know, there is an evil side about blockchain. Yeah, there are so many good stuff about the blockchain. Like we can first, in all the history, now we can get rid of central authority and achieve consensus among the distributed network. But to achieve this goal, to achieve distributed consensus, we have to pay some really heavy price. That is proof of work, or you may say mining. Like when you do proof of work or when you do mining, actually you are doing some hashing, right? You do hash and hash and hash again and again, and when you finally get the right answer, you can broadcast your right answer to everyone else, and everyone else has to believe you. That's the main idea of consensus. I have some numbers here. To achieve this consensus, to achieve this goal, you have to, let me see, here we have some number like the electricity consumption on Bitcoin mining in 2017. It equals to the electricity consumption of 2 million US homes, and that's a lot. And let's just imagine we can use all these powers, the electricity power, also the computing power to somewhere else, maybe deep learning. In deep learning, we have some huge computing power demand. I also have some other numbers. Let me see here. I have a cheat note here. Let's say the ResNet, which is image classification network, it has 152 layers and 60 million parameters. And the training set for this image net, it has 1.3 million images. And if we want to train this model on a single GPU node, it will take 19 days. So the deep learning area demands a lots of computing power and electricity power. So there is a gap between blockchain and deep learning. So our goal, our vision is to fill this gap. How to fill this gap? Our approach is to give the audience, to give the public AI mining network. So the details of this AI mining network is like this. First, we let the miner take turns to do the mining. And second, when the miner it gets the opportunity to do the mining, the miner has to do a deep learning problem, has to solve a deep learning problem. And the reason to do this is to let the miners AI ready. By AI ready, I mean its hardware must be capable of do some deep learning work. And when the miners do not have to do the mining, because the miners take turns to do the mining. When the miners do not need to do the mining, it can use its computing power to do something useful, to do something helpful to the real world, and it can give all its computing power and electricity power to the public. So that's our goal. And yeah, I think it's. I don't know if I said things right. So this is our approach to enable this AI mining network. Okay.
Owen, anything to add about this previous update we just had?
Just,
That's all?
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope you have got some information you're curious about in the briefing session. So on to the second part. We're going to have 10 questions selected from the community. We'll have the 3 guests answer them one by one. So the first one, when do you expect the first real retail order to run over MAN network for AI services?
I'll answer this. Yeah, based on Matrix AI network and our AI mining network, we are developing decentralized clouding computer platform. So as we know, this platform will be finished in next year. So I think we can expect the first order will happen in the second quarter in 2020.
The second one, how do you intend to attract customers both on the corporate and public side? In which market do you see the most potential for AI services and why?
This is my question. Basically, actually we are a public blockchain network, but our AI techniques are more oriented to industry-based solutions. So our focus now is covering the customers. And basically, of course, we do a lot of things to attract customers. One of the most important one is that we collaborate with the public cloud service, like Amazon, like Tsinghua Unido, which we are leading providers in China. So we already signed a strategic collaboration agreement with the Tsinghua Unido Group, and we will sign more in the short future. Because these cloud service providers, they host data from many different customers, especially they have a strong momentum to attract customers in the manufacturing business. So as long as they have data, of course they will need data analysis solutions. So these the cloud providers will naturally introduce customers to us. That's one of the major ways to attract customers. On the public side, we are doing less, but still, I think the decentralized computing platform is an important way to attract customers, because many people will use our platform to do computing, to do machine learning, computing tasks. Naturally, they will seek AI solutions from us. So I guess this is a way we attract customers. And for now, our focus is the most important market is predictive maintenance. Predictive maintenance, basically the idea is that use the AI technologies to forecast the future status of machines. Because industry machines, because in our whole world, this whole society, actually the operation of the whole society hinges on these machines. We need airplanes, we need high-speed trains, and many other equipment. We need this to do a lot of jobs and to do our daily business. But these are machines, so they will fail. So if we can have data, sensor data collected from these machines, and we use AI techniques, we can predict, forecast the future operations of these machines, so that we can perform active actions to prevent catastrophic accidents, and we can lower the maintenance cost, and so on. So that's something very big, because around the whole world, every year, the total loss of machine failures is something like over $600 billion. That's a big deal, and the indirect loss will be even much higher. So if we can lower this part of loss, it's mean a lot for the human society, and we think it's the most important issue we should focus on.
Okay. So thank you, Steve, for answering this question. I suppose this is a very descriptive and detailed answer, a step-by-step guide as to how our vision is going to unfold in the future. So let's go on to the third question. What will the real-world application of AI mining be?
Okay, I will answer this question. In the first version of our AI mining, we just offered the future staging and future analysis algorithm in our AI mining system. So in this industry, so in this stage, these industries who will need the future staging or the analysis will need our AI mining service. So we can offer a service to maybe the AI traffic. So the traffic department, they can use our AI mining to develop their applications to maybe announce the code of the cars and tell people how crowded this road is. Yeah, I think in the first stage we can offer services to these industries.
Okay. The next question is for Steve. what aspect of decentralized AI do you think people underestimate or undervalue most?
Actually, Owen already talked about the applications, the initial applications. Actually, what I am now very interested in is the so-called automatic machine learning. So, currently we know how to use deep learning techniques to build models, to solve real problems. But the problem is that we need experts, like to do the training, to tune the model topology, to train the parameters. That's not everybody can do. It's a lot of expertise. But the problem is that we do not have so many talented people to do this. But everybody is his own model to solve his own problem. So currently, the automatic machine learning techniques are coming to a rescue. The idea is that you use reinforcement learning or other statistical optimization techniques to automatically optimize, to design a new model to solve a problem. So with this distributed, decentralized computing infrastructure, basically we can do this automatic machine learning on an unprecedented scale. And because our computing infrastructure is less expensive in terms of price, so it means that a lot of people can have access to this computing power and solve his own problem. Everybody can be an AI expert if we can really make this whole thing work.
Okay. Then the fifth question. This is a question for Steve, for Owen. In a general sense, could you give us your views on how FPGA miners are coming along?
Actually, FPGA is a very useful device for computing solutions, but for mining, proper FPGA is not that proper. The reason that for Bitcoin-based, Bitcoin-alike mining algorithms, FPGA could not provide such a high computing power. It's not comparable with ASIC-based solutions. But for ETH-based mining algorithms, which is memory intensive, FPGA usually has a less bandwidth available, so the computing is also less efficient. For other algorithms, like machine learning-based ones, FPGA may have an edge, but the problem is that FPGA is high-end FPGA. This algorithm will need high-end FPGAs. High-end FPGAs are very expensive. They're actually more expensive than GPUs. So this makes FPGA a less favorite solution option for this whole in this whole picture.
So would you like to answer the next question as well?
Please.
Okay. I think the development of AI is very brain-taxing work, but I suppose it's very interesting as well. But the next question is going to be a very interesting one. And what area of AI related to matrix, of course, have you seen the most progress, and what was perhaps unexpected?
Actually, as far as I can, what comes to my mind now, I think it's audio-based machine learning applications. And by audio, I mean sound signals from the natural world and artificial equipment, not the language side. Actually, we currently most AI solutions are targeting vision-based signals and image analysis, like video recognition. But we have to remember that audio signals are at least as important as vision signals. We use audio to do a lot of things and to convey a lot of information. Currently, we found that deep learning techniques can also be very useful for audio-based analysis. Currently, we are doing a few projects. For instance, we are using audio signal-based analysis to detect failures in the machines. Because when machine fails, there will be some noise, some unusual noise from these machines. We can use that to detect the failure of machines and predict the future status, future accidents of these machines. And another interesting project is that we can use sound signal. We can use the chirps of birds to figure out the distribution of birds in the sky above the airfield. In the airport, the bird impact on airplane is a big concern. But with sound signals, we can actually figure out what birds are in what height in the whole space. And so then we can figure out ways to reduce the risk of bird impact.
Audio analysis, that could be something very big in the future. It could be a field of great potential and real-world uses question is, what are the biggest challenges facing AI, matrix AI, in both technological development sense and the regulatory sense? And how do you plan to overcome these challenges?
At first, the developing part, the biggest problem for us, I think, is the things matrix AI network we are developing is very new to the whole world. That means for us, we don't have too much the previous experience or the technologies to learn. So in this situation, every time when we need to start a new project, we need to do lots of the research, we need to read lots of the papers, also we need to do lots of the discussion. After that, when we finished one project, we also need to do lots of the testing to keep it, make it really work and safe. And for the regulatory part, we are trying our best to get cooperations with also the industry and the companies. We want more and more people to use our technologies to update their technology or their services. Also, till now, and I think more and more countries get more welcome to the blockchain technologies. I think it's very good for us. Yeah.
Very interesting answer. Developing AI technology is both a technological discovery and a real-world business, so it's bringing both sides together. The next question, what will be the real-world application of object detection on the matrix wallet?
Actually, this is application on the wallet, so it should be a personal application. So one such application is we can use the object detector to use it as a calorie calculator. When you are about to have a meal, you can take a picture, take a photo of dishes, and with the object detector, you can figure out which dish are in this meal. And if you have a database, suppose you have a database associated with the whole thing, you can figure out how many calories you will consume during this meal. So that means you can keep healthy by using our object detector.
Oh, I might consider using that to control my intake of calories with that feature is out. The next question, what is your strategy on raising masternodes ROI?
For this question, I think the key point is our decentralized cloud computing platform. So we are trying our best to develop this program. So this means when the platform launches, the miners they can rent their computing power to the users who need the AI computing power when they haven't been selected as the master nodes. That means besides the mining revenues, they also can get a big revenue from renting their computing power. So in these situations, the more users are using our platform, and the more ROI the master node will get.
Okay, so here is our last question. It's for Steve. How many nodes and how many computational power do you estimate will be needed to attain stability in AI network of the matrix platform?
Actually, we do not have a predefined threshold for this, but as we are currently targeted on machine learning application, so for this whole thing to work, my guess is that we at least have 100, 200, or 200 GPUs at least, so that people have an acceptable user experience.
Okay.
But of course, the more the better.
So, dear audience, that's the end of our 10 questions. So in the last part, our staff behind the scene has selected 5 questions from the community. You're ready for the unveil? So let's go. The first lucky winner whose question is selected is Abraham Rosen. I hope I didn't mess up your name, but here is your question. How many people in the Matrix team, how many people are there in the Matrix team? How does the Matrix matrix team development progress?
In matrix team, there are about 70 people in our team. Yeah, and how does matrix team development progress?
Actually, we are making good progress on two sides. Actually, one is the blockchain itself, blockchain technology. Our CTO Bill has his team and working on this, and you can know the announcement of the progress so far. And another team is the AI team. They are currently working on a few very interesting and supposed to be high value projects. And like I mentioned before, it's predictive maintenance. We use AI technologies to predict the operation of machines and try to figure out the best way to maintain these machines. The other approach is like rather wind power prediction and other AI applications, also related to the industry, but less covered. Yeah.
A second question from YouTube user Travel Top Note. Just a reminder, when our AMA ends, you can leave your wallet address, matrix wallet address in the comment section, so it will send you your reward as soon as possible, so be sure to stay till the end. Your question is, how does matrix AI help to diagnose lung cancer?
So previously we developed, we partnered with hospitals and medical company. We developed something like lung cancer diagnosis procedure. So basically it's image-based processing, image-based AI models. Giving the CT images, we built image-based classification model which could detect the early signs of lung cancer. So, and the accuracy rate is over, I would say, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it should be something like over 90%. It's better than most human being others.
That's a lot of great potential. So the third question by EU Chin. When will the mining machine be for sale, and how much will it be worth?
Answer this way. Some of our cooperation companies are designing mining machines just for matrix AI network. I think maybe in the next month they will release some messages about how to sell the machines and how much.
And the fourth question from Andrew Stock. Do we have an estimate of when GPU mining will be available for testing by the community? The last release didn't have complied binaries, and I don't believe anyone in the community was able to test.
Maybe in a week or two. We are doing some tests ourselves, so be patient, please. It's a lot of work. This is a major update of the mining algorithms, so we have to really be exhaustive about testing. Maybe in a week or 2 weeks, we will release something you can test. So please wait and see.
The last question from Marta Valero. How do you see Matrix in 5 years?
We are trying to build a real cloud computing center, distributed cloud, distributed cloud. So, it's really hard to say.
Yeah, we just want, we wish our decentralized cloud computer platform can, something is huge and as big as maybe AWS or something else, and it's a real big decentralized.
And we want to beat them in the price, like we can offer the cheapest computing power to the public. And also, like Dan just mentioned, we are trying to implement some auto machine learning or auto deep learning topological search years. It's a really long time. Yeah, it's really hard to say.
We are aiming very high goals, and we have good confidence to believe that it's going to happen in 5 years.
So, hi guys, I think this is the end of our AMA session. I hope this session has brought you a lot of detailed information as to your real concerns, as well as the more broad visions to you. If you still have any other questions and we haven't picked your question, you're still welcome to go to our social media account or just ask those questions to us in the Telegram group. So today's lucky winner, let me repeat their names. They are Ibrahim Erozen, and the second one is Prabal Topno. The third one is Chin Yu Chin. The fourth one is Andrew Stock. The last one is Marta Valero. I hope I didn't mess up your name, but if you are still there watching, please do leave your Matrix wallet address in the comment section. We'll give you your reward as soon as possible. So I think that's it for today's AMA live stream. We hope to see you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. See you. Bye. Bye.